The leadership environment has drastically changed. And if I would want to summarize it, I think it's basically in three aspects. We see more opportunities. I think we see bigger threats, and we see higher complexity. The higher complexity means if you take all of these megatrends and then you combine it, start combining artificial intelligence with big data and robotics, for example, there are even bigger kind of things, more complex kind of interdependencies and more complex opportunities that we actually see. But equally, if you try to fix the global problems, the complexity in fixing the global problems is also very high. You cannot just go there and say, okay, we fixed the energy problem. Because if you fix the energy problem, it will have got knock-on effects on other things. So in a nutshell, I think the environment has changed dramatically in a way that it's getting more extreme.
Yes, if I reflect also myself on the question, what has changed in terms of environment, then the straightforward answer would be about everything that we can think of. And it's a typical symptomatic situation linked to really a change in economic order, in political order. It's like we had the Industrial Revolution. I truly believe that we are going through a very similar phase. And as I already heard from some of you, it's the opportunities as well as the challenges. Opportunities like artificial intelligence and challenges maybe like climate change that compound to really drive a new type of order and way we collaborate and move forward in this world.
I'd like to just add in another one, which I think is huge. Certainly within the capital market, shareholder dominance has led to all sorts of really difficult issues, which have probably been changing in their intensity over the last, since the Second World War, I would say. But the move to a wider shareholder, or rather stakeholder basis, is something which people are incredibly fearful of. And I had also been thinking about speed of change in terms of what has changed. And I think one of the things to add to what you've just said, Peter, is the recognition of those moments, those pivot moments that leaders and the leadership cadre need to judge to make. And they're really, really hard to make anyway. But when you've got the sort of environment you were just describing with the speed of change, it becomes even more difficult.
We have these different aspects, these different perspectives that all need to be taken into account. I think we have been talking about geopolitical things. We have been talking about climate. We have been talking about all of the challenges, about all of the opportunities. We have been talking about that nothing really is the same. And honestly, I think even in the future, nothing will be the same. So I think from that point of view, we have this continuous change, this continuous complexity, this continuous ambiguity, which I think we need to recognize as a given factor in the outside world, in the outside environment.
What we believe the characteristics of a leader in this century are going to require, and it comes down to some really basic things about the character of an individual and their comfort around what they show up as, what they show other people that they are, and where that comes from. So recognizing the life lived and the experiences that they've had, the failures as well as the successes, and be very comfortable with being open about that and their own vulnerabilities, that in this changing world, as we've already discussed, nobody is likely to have all of the answers and be perfect all the time. So we have to recognize that there are skills associated with the character that we require of a leader. But as you've already heard, the importance of being collaborative and recognizing that this is a team game, not purely down to one individual.
They should literally take off the blinkers, right? They should look left or right as well. And and should sort of almost like wake up and not be partially blind to sort of blind spots that have not been regarded in the past. They need to understand the complexity. They need to have everything on the radar.
You can actually come to a far better process of decision making that is based on really high quality debate, based on the diversity of the colleagues that you have selected and brought into that discussion.
We are very often demanded to make quick decisions as well, and we have almost an overwhelming flood of information at hand. So I think what we need to do is we need to sharpen our analytical minds as leaders, but at the same point in time we need to sort of also sharpen our intuitive knowledge, our intuitive minds. Leadership development on one hand side and personal development will actually merge, will go hand in hand. This is particularly interesting from the aspect of authenticity and authentic leadership.
Self-awareness has always been an important trait in leadership, but I think right now it's crucially important as a starting point to develop good leadership and show good leadership in an organization. What does it mean for change in leadership? I would say two very important things. First of all, self-awareness more than ever before. Second, being conscious about the beliefs we hold, which is linked to self-awareness, and being able to reframe them and do things differently in the future. There are three dimensions that are critically important. And the first comes back to what I explained about being able to change your beliefs. It's about your mind agility. It's really your ability to put a stop to what you've really known before and trying to reframe the beliefs that you hold and constantly having that reflection. The second thing is really about value-based decision making and having the right set of values to wade through that complexity and ambiguity and making decisions based on this core framework that we hold. What is ethically correct, what is a force for good, what is the right way of doing my business with the right impact. And the third aspect, third dimension, is really about passion and purpose, and it's really linked together.
Lying behind wise and responsible leaders is the idea that, on the one hand, wisdom is focused on mind, what is actually happening between our ears, and on the other hand, a more action-oriented concept which is based on responsibility. But there's another facet to this from the way that we in the faculty have thought about leadership and the way we've designed our thinking, and that is to look at personal life characteristics as well as life purpose, which we define as those behaviors, those characteristics that are used in an organizational setting. When we go out to work, what do we actually bring and what do we do when we're there? And then thirdly is what we call life unlimited. So it's the impact that a leader has on society, on the natural world around them, and the impact that they can make based probably on quite a strong moral code in the way that they think and the way that they action in the world.
What prevents wisdom? There seems to be an old Celtic saying which actually says wisdom is prevented by ignorance, by superficial knowledge, and by forgetfulness. To actually master wisdom, I think we need to not fall into the trap of ignorance, superficial knowledge, and forgetfulness. It's good and wise to actually make a lot of experiences, but it's probably less useful if you are emotionally attached to these experiences. So a wise leader would also need to be able to integrate or to heal, if you like, emotional irritations which he or she has got from the past. If I finally look at what actually defines, from my point of view, a responsible leader in terms of wise and responsible leadership, I think responsibility for me is the ability to really respond, to have an answer, to know what to do in any given situation. So you could say that a responsible leader is somehow creating his or her destiny rather than being a victim of the circumstances.
Wise is really about the character dimensions of the leader, while responsibility, being responsible, is really on the execution side, on the action side of a leader, the kind of decisions we make and the way we execute them.
Low ego of a leader is highly correlated to their ability to collaborate and to the attractiveness that they will have for the followers who are critical to any leadership cadre and any organization that's trying to do anything well and sustained.
But if my self-definition, if my identity would be more inclusive, if I would actually associate myself and expand my identity to include others, to include my family, to include my team, and so on. So if the definition of self actually gets expanded, egocentricity isn't a bad thing at all.
The world really in need of more humble and hungry leadership in a positive way. If you don't combine hungriness with humility, it's a real big problem. But on the other side, if you're humble but you're not hungry, then nothing is moving. So it goes back to the same two aspects, like wisdom and responsibility. You have humility and you have hungriness, and when you combine them both, it's becoming a very powerful notion for leadership in this world to move forward. Programs have been more focused on rational thinking and developing skills. While moving forward in this new context, I think the intuitive part in leadership is becoming increasingly important, combined with, again, more than just skill, the character of leadership. And where in the past we related empathy to how to deal with others and to build soft skills around collaborating with others, I think we need to take a step back in this new context and really look at self and how we can first understand ourselves in order to be ready to deal with others and cope with these changing environments.
A lot of leadership development programs actually fail also because the impact is not lasting. And I think this might go hand in hand with the current expectations that we see in leadership development programs, because they are expected to be sort of quick fixes. And I think the other thing is that a lot of what is expected from leadership development programs today is that these leadership development programs develop tools and techniques rather than facilitating really profound personal transformations.
What makes the current approach to leadership development fail, from my perspective, is a few things. I think there has traditionally been a focus on financial measures. So share price, dividends, profitability, takeovers, so and so on. All of those things are important, but they are, just as you guys are saying, really short term. I think you would have to hunt a long, long way to find leadership development invested by organizations where they bring their best leaders to mentor other people. And as we're going to talk about later on about what the Cornerstone Leadership Academy is going to be supporting, the method that we will be, approach that we will be using is a mentoring one. I don't think that level of investment by mentors in businesses exists like it used to do years and years ago.
We need to look deeper into the personality of the leader. We probably need to remove some of the legacy, some of the blockages that the leader actually brings with him or her. Behavioral patterns need to be unlearned, and probably new behavioral patterns need to be learned. Thought patterns, probably old thought patterns, need to be challenged and reviewed, as well as also emotional patterns.
The unlearning needs to go back in our personal history quite a long way. I mean, probably all the way back to childhood. That's not to say that it becomes overly psychotherapeutic. I don't quite mean that, but I think so many of the things that we have learned in terms of the context and environment. I'll give you one example, that in schooling, I bet all of our schooling was based on, you need to be the best, you need the highest grade, you need to beat so-and-so to be at the top of the class. And is that right?
What I see is that there is a real need, like we said already, unlearning the way we're doing things today, which basically would be better based on actions and challenges that we have in daily life. And then having a mentor that can help you look at these same challenges and actions and decisions we make, but through kind of different eyes.
Our understanding as an academy around the real challenges, the big challenges that you've heard us speak of, about world order, about organizational justice, about diversity, and our understanding of what are the pain points in organizations, particularly in the tensions between leaders and those that they work with as peers or they work for, and critically those who follow them. How are these approaches reduce stress and anxiety that is inherent in organizations, particularly when they're coming under the sorts of pressures that are now typical? It's amazing when you actually talk to somebody that works for you, just how much they could bring if they were given the space and the oxygen and the lack of restriction around what it is they may be able to do for us. It's just one tiny example. One of the really terrific things about working on the design of all of this within the academy has been when we have reflected on wise and responsible leadership from a benefits point of view, because it was almost like turning on taps and it was just flowing.
When you achieve real wise and responsible leadership, as we define it, there are 3 levels of benefits, really. The first level is on yourself, to get into a state of true well-being. And the second is when we look at the organization, obviously developing that wise and responsible leadership with this new approach, ultimately brings the right leadership to the organization to take the organization to success in this VUCA environment. So the organization benefits directly from great leadership that is adapted to the new reality and the new context. And finally, I think in the end, it has a strong impact on society, because if both the leader and the organization are adaptive to this and are operating in a mode of wisdom and responsibility, obviously you get business for good.
Individuals will be clearer about their choice and their choices, about how do I use myself as a resource for the best. We're talking about worker satisfaction at every level. If you have good leadership, wise and responsible leadership, that's how the leaders will feel, but it's likely to permeate throughout the organization. And what are the types of signs of that working? Well, the obvious one is the level of energy and the level of performance is likely to be higher.
We need to enter this transformational journey to become a wise and responsible leader. I think the interesting question is, in which areas do we see the payoffs? So we have these payoff areas, obviously, as discussed in the life. So there is a personal benefit that every leader basically takes out of this, as well as a payoff in the area of business, where the leader becomes probably more effective, more trusted, more recognized, easier to follow. And then, as we have said before already, there is certainly a return on the investment also to the society and to the world.
It's the razor-sharp focus on developing wise and responsible leadership and having that impact on individual leaders as well as organizations, as the world, society at large, I think is really what differentiates us. And all the programs that we develop, all the intentions we have are driven really by that purpose. The second important thing is that we work highly customized. So you have a combination of online learning, mentorship, but at the same time, there is really a package that is not about fitting everyone, but really tailored to the needs of a particular individual or a particular group of individuals, where we also take assessments that are tailored. And based on these assessments, we analyze the gaps. We then recommend online learning, and follow up on that with action-based mentorship to really dig deep and bring the right knowledge over and help on the journey of unlearning. And the final thing is that the fact is that we have a faculty, a global faculty of very senior qualified mentors who in a way can also deliver virtually, globally. So it's no longer about who is a trainer in my neighborhood, but it's about having access to resources globally with a high diversity, not only in terms of geography, but also in terms of knowledge, experience, that all combined, I think, offers a very unique, timely response to virtual mentorship.
There is a high degree in flexibility. So we are basically maximizing the flexibility. So there is the flexibility in consuming the material, but it's also, as Peter has just said, it's the flexibility in tailoring almost and customizing the material and the content to the individual.
And our job is to match at different times in this development journey, as Peter was saying, the right mentor to the individual for what it is that they need in the next phase. I think that is something that the virtual nature of what we are setting up here allows us to do, and the amazing connections that we know we have across the world, where we can find people who think deeply and widely within the wise and responsible leadership frame, and also can then provide great assistance to those who are coming on the journey with us. One of the wisest coaches that I have ever met said that she felt the matching of a coach to a coachee was one of the most amazing gifts that if you can get it right.
I think the faculty members themselves bring a really sort of compelling mix of leadership experience in their own leadership business career, but also life experience. So they have been on their own journey.
We have been very cautious in bringing new faculty members on board, and really all of them have, like Carsten said, on one side, first of all, they are very focused and very committed to the purpose of the Cornerstone Leadership Academy, really believing in the benefits of having more wise and responsible leadership. That is one very important factor. The second factor is that there is indeed personal leadership experience and life experience that actually elevates these individuals to a level where you would really like to trust them to be on your personal board.